A very warm good afternoon to all the history enthusiasts. Once again, we are very glad to welcome you all to this panel discussion. This is our second panel discussion. The last one was also based on gender issues, and it was on the occasion of Navratri. Today, again, we meet on the occasion of National Women's Day. We are celebrating the 143rd birth anniversary of India's Nightingale, Sarojini Naidu, and I think it is very relevant today that we discuss many issues that women are facing. But we also thought that instead of just focusing on women, we will focus on gender stereotypes, of which both men, women, and all the genders of society are a victim. So today it is a very uh, uh, privileged moment for me to welcome you all. I first of all welcome Professor Rekha Pandey ma'am. She's the director of Society for Empowerment through Environmental Development. Ma'am, I welcome you. I also welcome Miss Reena Diwan. She's the director of Kolkata Center for Creativity and the state president of West Bengal Art Leadership Council. Welcome you also, ma'am. I also welcome my friend and co-founder and the co-host, moderator of this panel discussion, Miss Nidhi Katti. Welcome, Nidhi. And most importantly, I welcome all our viewers without whose support we will never be, we don't feel so motivated to keep presenting new content. So, without any further ado, I request Ms. Nidhi Katti to introduce our first panelist, Ms. Reena Diwan.
Thank you so much, Manali, for a warm welcome. It's an opportunity. It's a great privilege and a great honor to introduce Miss Reena Diwan, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Reena Diwan, ma'am, wear multiple caps as an educator, social entrepreneur, and holds several positions in leadership roles in art cultural organizations. She has been spearheading many projects in KCC to promote research and development of different disciplines of art that leads to a volumetric and qualitative impact. Reena ma'am is champions and facilitates inclusion, diversity, accessibility, and gender equality in museums and art spaces. She is instrumental in launching the first accessibility program in Eastern India that forms a bridge between people with special abilities and arts. She co-convened the first international conference in India on gender mainstreaming and cultural rights. She is pioneering social changes, creating an inclusive culture in KCC that addresses different abilities and choices, gender and sexual diversity, and marginalization of communities through appreciation and application of art. Uh, she is doing a great work and she is a role model for all women, and we are really inspired by your biodata, ma'am. It's brief but very impressive, and when I was reading it when you sent it, I really felt that there is a lot more for us to do, and we can take message from you through this panel discussion. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to introduce, ma'am. I request Reena Diwan, ma'am, to start her talk.
Thank you so much, Monali, and thank you so much, Nidhi, for inviting me and doing this because this is important to give voice to people. It is important to talk about the issues which are usually shunned away under the carpet. So I'll give my brief presentation because it is about Sarojini Naidu's celebration. Of course, India's Nightingale and another Nightingale just passed away, just left us. So I think it's the time that we are celebrating women power in any case. Uh, so Sarojini Naidu said that when there is oppression, the only self-respecting thing is to rise and say this shall cease today because my right is justice. If you're stronger, You have to help the weaker, boy or girl, both in play and in the work. Sarojini Naidu is a leader of the freedom movement who has an extensive contribution to India's independence. She was also a great poet, which part is still less explored. However, our reading is saying that the way in which we got to know about the male freedom fighter, do we know the female fighters as well in the same manner? In that elaborate way? Yes, we know the names like Sarojini Naidu, and few more for their effort in contributing to the freedom movement, along with their effort in building society, schools in colonial India. But we also need to see that the name always came to our history book with some famous male figures, but not as an individual. As we know that Naidu was an active member during the non cooperation movement, but how much do we know about her contribution to leading women groups during the movements and making them aware of their rights in the colonial period? This history of unacknowledged women is not a brief one, but we have witnessed it in all the fields in so many ways. As the patriarchal society considers women as the second gender, women remain in the shadow in supporting roles. When we go to work with communities, we have seen that women artists even need permission for performances from their husbands. The agency of women is not acknowledged even if they are the only earning member of the family. I have witnessed during my field visits that while the main artist is the woman, she does not have the due credit. The women in the art community are often not allowed to speak with outsiders, even about their works, as the power remains to the man of the family. Often we see that the husbands become the manager of the troupe who controls the administration, perform shows, negotiate with remuneration, become the spokesperson, controller, etc. Here comes the questions of women's agency. Where does it remain? Does she even have the agency on her body? In that case, where she can choose to perform or not to perform? It is unfortunate to say that the scenario in urban areas is equal. Along with the issue of not acknowledging the effort, we also witness the politics of power equation within the gender spectrum. The stereotypical thinking on gender, these are the things that we need to address repeatedly. If we try to see the root of the cause, we can take an example of the theatre history of Bengal. Women were not allowed in the theatre during the 18th century, as people were thinking that showcasing women bodies on stage to the public can be harmful to the society. The Bengali intellects claimed that women actors on stage would be the cause of deterioration of society. It could affect the characteristics of men as well. Hence, women were not allowed on the stage. The women actors started coming by the intellectual babus in the name of reformation as the women were coming from prostitution. They thought that the theater could save the women from their degradation. Therefore, women from the respected family were not allowed to do theater. However, gradually the scenario started changing. From this example, we can understand that the stereotypical understanding and consideration of gender did not provide the equal space for women. We also can see that the public performance for women in dance and music had the same history. Therefore, now as many women are coming in the field and leading the scenario, they are making their marks on the history which is male dominated. If we see the current situation in the art field, we can see that the number of cases of sexual harassment is alarming and disappointing as well. The workplaces are failing to provide safe spaces to women. As the art fields, theater, music, dance is not considered as workplace, the women artists do not know where to reach for justice as the judicial system does not cover all the nuances that a woman struggles with in terms of harassment and abuse in the workplace. Also, the patriarchal system and the history have normalized the harassment cases when it came to art sectors. While we talk about the acknowledgement of women, we also revisit again and again how more women can come forward in the arts sector and how we as art leader can ensure a better space for all of us. We need to come up with sensitive, safe spaces where a women would be comfortable to reach out. We must thrive and advocate for the safe spaces so that many women can come up and establish themselves as practitioners. And while the topic is not limited to just women, we have queer community who have their own struggles. They had been fighting for their rights, the rights to live and choose what they want. How can a choice of my sexuality can be the identity of mine? How can you question my integrity? How can you question my intellect just because I have chosen to be sexually different than the so-called normal society? Here, the struggle is coming from the patriarchal society. As much as the women is marginalized, so is the man. Because he has been told मर्द को दर्द नहीं होता. But मर्द को भी दर्द होता है. He has the same skin as women. But he has been told to be a macho man. He cannot cry. Thankfully, some of the things are changing, but it's very small. It's a very small part of the urban population that is still able to say that, yes, we identify ourselves as human first and men or women or any gender later on. So this is something we need to address, we need to talk because when it comes to gender identity, my question is why are we looking at choice of sexuality and gender and making a character out of anybody for that matter? So this is my short presentation. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It was very meaningful and it was a very good starting for the panel discussion. It is now time to introduce our second panelist, Professor Rekha Pandey, ma'am. And it is my privilege to introduce Madam. Professor Rekha Pandey is a former professor of history and women's studies in the University of Hyderabad. She is the present director of SEED, that is Society for Empowerment through Environment Development. She was the former head of the Center for Women's Studies and head Department of History at the University of Hyderabad, India. She was also the director of Women's Studies at Maulana Azad National Urdu University. She has been the founding member of two centers for women's studies, one at Maulana Azad National Urdu University and the other at University of Hyderabad. She was the chair of the Women's World Congress in 2014, organized for the first time in India. She has, to her credit, 20 books and more than 150 articles in national and international journals, book chapters, and proceedings. Her work is the interdisciplinary area of history and women's studies. She has been the editor of International Feminist Journal of Politics, Routledge Taylor and Francis Group, UK. She also edited Foreign Policy Analysis, which is published by Blackwell, USA. She has received the Visiting Fellowship, Birkbeck Institute of Humanities, University of London, International Visiting Fellowship in the School of Policy Studies in the University of Bristol, UK, Academic Fellow, University of Buffalo, USA, and International Visiting Scholar at Maison de Research, Paris, and Visiting Professorship at the University of Artois, Arras, France. She was invited as an erudite scholar for gender studies by the government of Kerala in 2016. She was also nominated as the Peace Ambassador for South Asia region by the International Women's Peace Group, Korea, for the year 2016 to 2018. She has been the project director of 42 projects. She has guided 23 PhD and 44 MPhil students in both history and gender studies. She has been an assessor for NAC and involved in the accreditation and evaluation of a large number of colleges and universities across India. She has widely traveled in India and abroad to deliver keynote addresses and lectures and present papers in national and international conferences. She has been recently invited by the National Commission for Women, Government of India, to be its resource person for gender sensitization and gender development programs in India. Ma'am, it is such an honor to have us with us today on this panel discussion. And We hope that our association with you continues to flourish. I now request you to begin your talk, your presentation.
Thank you very much, Monali, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really very happy to be here. And it was nice listening to Reena Devan talking about art and women. And Nidhi, I'm really happy. And all the history enthusiast group, and especially when young people have so much of a commitment for history, I think it moves me, having been in the field for more than 40 years. And today is a very special day, when we are celebrating Sarojini Naidu's birthday. And I can't just help going back into history. I had got married and I had come to Hyderabad. I had joined the university in 1984. And as a young girl, at that time 27, 28 years old, when I landed in the office, within half an hour, I got a call. And this was the vice chancellor who wanted to speak. And he said, "You are a new person who's just joined." And he had to give a talk on Sarojini Naidu within a month at some place. So he said, "I'm giving you this task and you will have to prepare this report and give me." The house of Sarojini Naidu is gifted to our university. It's called the Golden Threshold, and all our classes were held there. In fact, her ashes are kept there. Gandhiji also had visited. We still have a tree which is in the name of Gandhi. So, it's always been very close to us. It continues with our university. We started our arts classes there. And that was a wonderful time. For 1 month, I met so many people. I interviewed a large number of people, and I was able to give him my report. Today, I feel bad. Those were the days we didn't have computers. We didn't even have so much access to typing, typewriters, etc. And I think it was my handwritten report, and I still don't have a trace of it. So that's been a big regret. So, Sarojini Naidu has always been very close to me in that sense. And today, the topic that you all are talking, you're talking in terms of changing gender stereotypes through history. You're talking about ancient problems and modern challenges. And what I thought was, Reena Devan had spoken about arts. So I thought I will take you into academics. We are talking of stereotypes that have been built for more than 5,000 years. And it's not that easy to get away with them. See, by and large, how have we studied women? It is always men who have defined women, and it is their view which has a very important and pervasive influence on human thought. We always examine women as semi humans. They are not able to speak for themselves, and women are only looked upon. Very rarely did women do their own looking. And by and large, we study women as only anomalies. Kumkum Bhavani has given a beautiful concept called edit. She says, by and large, if you look at traditional disciplines, we have erased the total contribution of women. D, we have denied their contribution. And I, there is an invisibility of women in frontier areas of knowledge. And at the most, there is some tokenism where few women are visible at the height. I'll give you a very interesting example. In 1986, Reader Digest brought out a special volume, and it was called The Last 2 Million Years. There were 34 experts who had contributed to this book. Out of them, 33 were men, only one was a woman. And the first sentence of the book starts by saying, "Man has lived on this earth for more than 2 million years." And then, it goes on to talk about the chapters are man and his world, man and his achievement, man the inventor. The word women is not even there in the index. Now, many will argue when we say man, it includes women. Then it should be the other way around, because the word women includes men and we should keep saying women. Now, why is it that women have had no history? I would like to use a Marxian concept, because women have had no history, because the expropriation of history becomes a very important mechanism for reproducing in the ideological sphere social inequality. When Marx talks about the economic realm, he says about the relations of domination and subordination. They are reinforced when, with the expropriation of the economic surplus. Similarly, with the expropriation of history from women, we continue to enforce male dominance. And what we have done, we have divided activities into two, you know and the ones with which women are involved, they are regarded as being unimportant, unworthy of study, and therefore they are outside the discipline of history. Because after all, what is the whole principle of a patriarchal society? Men work in the public domain and women are in the private, and it is history is only concerned with the public domain, what happens outside, empires, emperors, king. But if you look at it, it is the women who is giving birth to that king through whom these empires are being built. But that women is nowhere in the picture. And we somehow think that, because the public domain is more important, women only become passive participants in the historical process. And what happens? Our whole past is from a very male centric point of view. You do have few Razia, Chand Bibi, Lakshmi Bai, but then we are talking about these women because they are performing men like roles. In few textbooks, you have a chapter on women. But by and large, what we have done in history is we have presented men's history as being universal human. The whole concepts, priorities, they all reflect a male interest, concern, and experience. So by and large, we have ignored women in history because we assume they have not played any important part. We continue to get a very partial picture because history is nothing but his story. There is no her story in this. See, I'm not arguing that we only need to talk about her story. We need to talk about both. Unless we add women to our understanding of the past, our past will continue to be a very partial and biased one, and we will never get our story. We want our story. So, therefore, what one attempts, what is the aim we should do in women's history? That we need to add women into our history so that we can work towards a better understanding of the past. And we understand the past as an evolution of an ideology, social relations, and social institutions that lead to the subordination of women. Today, we do talk of class, caste, and race, and they have played a very important part in rewriting history. But then we also need to now talk about women, because the starting point of putting women into history would be the assumption that both men and women, though they had different roles, what is significant historically is that women constitute a social group as opposed to a biological group. So gender also becomes a very important concept in history. How have we looked at our history of women? There is an invisibility approach that, oh, women are not there, they are not in the front scene. So women are by and large invisible. But then this is only true if we are not looking for them. But if you start looking for them, we recognize their presence, automatically we'll ask a question as to why there are so few women, why are so many forgotten. This will lead us to an understanding of the whole social dynamics that define some activities which are permissible for women from other activities where they have been shut and they have been excluded from history's memory. There have also been an approach which we can call as the discriminatory approach, that we look upon women's work as being inferior and therefore they have less value. Another could be a different sphere approach, that both men and women are performing in different areas, their work should be valued. But as a history student, what is important is we need an integrated approach. Civilization has been created by both men and women, and therefore we need to add these women. When initially people started asking these questions, many historians, many of them women of the first generation, they were trained in traditional methods of history. And their whole approach for writing women's history was talking about compensatory history or talking about women worthies. They started looking for notable women, and you had a lot of writing about how these notable women contributed to uh, history. But then slowly, as the scope expanded, we find that there was a lot of discussion and writing saying women have always had different experiences with respect to their consciousness, depending on whether their work is their expression, their activity in a male defined role. And women are also indoctrinated in this male defined value system, and they conduct their lives accordingly. And so, there were a lot of these questions saying we need to really look on the experiences of women. And then you had a contribution history where they started talking in terms of defining the contribution of women, why were women oppressed in this male defined society. And when we look at it, the way most of our history is written, towards the 19th century. And at this time, it was the Europeans who started taking a lot of interest. Ancient history excited them. They tried to construct the whole glory of an Indian civilization and its past. Now, what happened in the search for a romantic, distant ethnic world and the whole utopia to escape the bewildering changes that were taking in 19th century Europe? They presented our past as a very homogeneous one without any aberrations. You had people like William Jones and H.T. Colebrook. They were closely associated with the Asiatic Society. They wrote on wide ranging themes of Sanskrit literature, history, philosophy. And Jones, he did not even pay attention to Sati. And very passingly, he mentions Gargi, saying she was eminent for her piety and learning. And when Colebrook is looking at Sati, he gives a very textbook position. And then you had the writings of James Mill. James Mill looked upon Hindu civilization as being very crude because the way we were treating our women. He divided Indian history into three, saying, the Hindu, because it was Hindus who were ruling in ancient India, then you had Muslims. And instead of the third period calling it Christian period, he refers to it as British India. So India gets divided into Hindu India, Muslim India, and British period. And he said, we have deprived women from sacred texts. They do not have an education. They have no share in property. And they are not even, held worthy to eat with their husbands. And he said all the Hindu men were very effeminate. There was another book which was published in 1927, Catherine Mayo's Mother India. And, it provided a detailed and indignant account of the sexual excesses of an Indian man and, female suffering as a child bride. It became a bestseller of that time, because it served the colonial interest. A reviewer in New York Statesman wrote that Mayo's book made the whole claim for Swaraj, because we were demanding self-government at this time, seem nonsense, and the wish to grant it almost a crime. This was a period where we were evaluating a civilization, saying we need to treat a civilization as to being, civilized depending on how it is treating its women. And women were being naturally treated very badly at this time. We had sati, we had early marriages, widow were being treated badly, women were in the private domain, they did not have access to, education, they were in parda. And so, you had a number of people who really went back to this period. Max Muller also collected a lot of the text of the Vedas, and to him, this was the natural basis of Indian history. He also did not pay much attention to women. Very passingly, he, makes a reference that they were not treated as equal in the Aryan society. He talks a lot about the Maitri and Yajnavalkya episode, saying that women participated in rituals, they knew more, they had the highest knowledge of Atma and Brahma. Again, in 1856, a very interesting book was published by Charlotte Spears. And, she talks about, in this book, she says that, looking at from Manu, that the women's rights were something which were totally ignored in the Brahminical text, because wives and daughters are too happy to require these rights. And she gives lot of importance to, conjugal love, talking of Nal, Damayanti, etc. In 1867, another book was published by Clarice Bader, and the title of the book was Women in Ancient India. And she said that no, women are not excluded from rituals, because they were the ones who provided all the labor. They were collecting kusa grass, they were preparing the sacred enclosure. And she says the fall of women comes with the Krishna cult, which became very gross and materialistic. And she says, the law really wanted the women to identify her life with her husband, but they went a step further and they identified their death with their husband. And she, said that, look, the women in the Aryan civilization are characterized by their spiritual and ascetic tenderness. There is a complete denial of self and unlimited devotion to the family. And she said that, they were this was something, a lesson for the Western women. They should learn from Indian women how they dedicated themselves to the family. And she says in this civilization there is a preference for a son, because daughters can obviously not perform funeral rites. See, what was very important to understand, that when they were all writing about Indian history, they were trying to explain about women, especially. The whole purpose was to make them understand that, yes, now it is for the British to make efforts, and also make the natives appreciate the efforts they were making. And what they did, though, yes, they did make a contribution, because a large number of texts of Sanskrit and Persian were put into circulation, they were translated into English. But we cannot deny that a highly restructured version of the past was emerged. Uma Chakravarti has written a lot on this issue, and she has said that, most of the texts which were being used to write about ancient India were of Brahminical origin. They were very much preoccupied with religious and legal questions. And women are only viewed within the context of family and the relationship. There are only two kinds of relationship which are very important. One is between a husband and a wife, and the other is between mother and the child. But again, it is the child which becomes more important. And it is the bias of these Brahmins which comes into these texts, because it reflects the perception of the Brahmins, rather than and the upper class, rather than all these other sections of society. And therefore, if you look at it, we have to really go back. Even in medieval period, I'll try to cut short my thought, because if you look at it in medieval period and modern period also, we look upon a woman, a woman like Razia, who's fighting for herself, becomes a laughing stock. Noor Jahan, who's fighting for her husband, she, Vincent Smith calls it the petticoat garment. And only that woman who's fighting for her son, Lakshmi Bai, Chand Bibi, become exalted. So we have really not moved away from looking at women as mothers, fighting for their son. So therefore, what is very important is, we need to really, today times are changing, the tide is changing, and we need to really go back into our history, and we need to really rewrite this whole history with a new twist. When we started, it was a very narrow political history. Gradually, then we started talking of economic history, and this was again rejected for a broader approach. And then, we started talking about women's history, and which again became a component of the social history. And once this political gap, we narrowed this political history, we started talking of other areas. We had a lot of questions which came up. One was, how do we study earlier societies? How have women to be studied? How do we celebrate the resistance of women, or simply because women have been there? And we hit a wall, because we, for thousands of years, not only in India but all over the world, we have been told about women. Like I said in the beginning, women have hardly done their own looking. They have always been looked upon. What did Aristotle say? He's contributed immensely to the Western cultural tradition. And yet, he says that it was, the misfortune of women not to be born into the powerful house. And he goes on to claim that the male is by nature superior and the female is inferior. And the one rules and the other is ruled. And therefore, the principle of necessity extends to all mankind. Then, if you look at the whole Christian teachings, everything is, this is how God has created it, this is how nature has created it. And it was, very futile for women to complain against the secondary status. And they were all, when God has created society like this, who are we to question? These were the kinds of things. And even when feudalism comes in, where military becomes important, where land becomes important, it's very difficult for women to establish themselves. But today, when we want to rewrite history, I think it is high time that we move from the approach of victimization to resistance. In my own work, when I've looked at the Bhakti, you had all these men who looked down upon women and said that, after all, women should only be at home. She is, she is Mohamaya, she is Kanaka Kamini. These were regarded as impediment. And at that time, you had a large number of women like Mahadevi Akka, Lalde, Bahina Bai, all of them, Meera Bai, who came and they, resisted patriarchy in their own terms. See, they were not like women going around with liberation, but they wanted a certain space for themselves and they negotiated patriarchy. So we've always had women, who have reinterpreted these epics of resistance. Women have not always been passive sufferers, though there were always attempts at trying to, put them down, but they have empowered their own lives. And there has, therefore, we nearly need to look back at this whole history. If you look down for the last more than 4 5,000 years, right from the laced, covered up, buttoned women of 100 years ago, today you see the modern women, who has who cannot be repressed in this male oriented culture and cannot no longer be treated as a second class citizen. 100 years back itself, women had no agency. But today, they are creating this agency. And what we find is, though, women continue to occupy these traditional roles, they are also taking up new roles. Whether you look at it, the world after the world wars, and we find that once women got this taste of freedom, they were really moving forward, talking of equality. And therefore, I would really like to conclude by saying that we need to look at our past from a new perspective and understand is much better. One recognizes that we've had so many different kinds of women. Women of the working class, elite class, rural class, urban class, middle class. They certainly do not reflect a single perspective mode. But we have to recognize that both men and women have contributed to making our past. And what is important is we need to really seek the universality of these experiences. We need to understand the social and ideological mechanisms that have ensured the subordination of women in a patriarchal society. And only then, will we be able to rewrite a new history where women have a certain status in that writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It was indeed very meaningful, and the way you narrated the changing perspectives about women's history throughout the academic history of India, it was really very interesting. I also want to add a few things to this. I was thinking about, since ma'am spoke about art history and women, and you spoke about the academic world. I was thinking about clothing and, I mean, dressing. When we see throughout history, in the Indus Valley period, or before that, I don't think there was much difference between dressing of men and women. They usually wore the same kind of clothes, and I don't know how and when these changes took place. Slowly, men have kept changing their dressing according to convenience. They were allowed to, make those changes as and when time changed and when they felt it convenient. But women still, they are, traditional, or an ideal woman is still required to wear certain clothes or dress in a certain way, and it takes her a lot of time. She has to wear all these sola shingar, and she has to groom herself. Uh, is it just I just felt this and I've heard it somewhere? It's not my own idea. I think I've read it or heard it somewhere. Uh, why such things were made compulsory for women? If a woman does not take care of herself, I mean, if she doesn't pay extra attention to her body, or doesn't wear a certain kind of clothes, or if she doesn't have long hair, if she doesn't take the pain to do the makeup and everything, uh, she is considered manly, and then it's not a compliment. If a woman looks like a man, it's not a compliment. It is something derogatory. And also, all this, is it maybe because she wastes a lot of time on those things? you know she is made to spend a lot of time on those things so that she cannot do important things that can actually give meaning, things that can make something, that can help her to develop her own identity in the society.
Yeah. Can I answer?
Sure, ma'am.
See, the problem is, if women like to dress up, there's nothing harm in that.
Of
See, every
course.
woman likes to be beautiful, to dress up. The problem is when we have converted beauty into a cult. And,
Yes.
women become redundant beyond looking good. You raised a very important question about clothing. Look at the women's dresses. Look at all these big fashion houses and all. Women have to expose their body. They have to, because that is seen as an in thing. Look at so many women suffer from backaches because the high heels which women are expected to wear, and women have also internalized a lot of these values. Men's clothing is so comfortable today. You can run around and others. But women's clothing is so uncomfortable because women have not dictated what they should wear. It is the male dominated patriarchal society which has told us that this is what is required, this is how you will look beautiful. Look at all our televisions, look at our cinema. You never find a man being exposed so much the way a woman is being exposed. So that is the biggest problem, that one, we have not looked at comfort. It is the men who are deciding, and they are the ones who decide. And second, it is the whole notion, by only putting women as, making beauty into a cult, women become redundant beyond looking good. We do not evaluate women as achievers, as leaders, as, of their society. It is only women if they are good looking. And look at all our advertisements today. A woman is either seen as a sex symbol, selling right everything from cement to cold drinks to everything, or she's like a housewife. She's so happy smelling clothes with beautiful detergent. A women's place is not only at home, according to these advertisements, it's only in the bathroom or in the kitchen. So, these kinds of bias which have come in, we really need to question, one, for whom are we dressing, and who is dictating what has to be worn.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am. Exactly. Because even today, most of women's clothing does not have pockets in it. Maybe
you.
they think we don't have the necessity to carry money or keys or any other, essential items with us. Maybe we are still not eligible to hold those things with us. I don't know. It is very
That's a
confusing
good
at
observation.
times.
Very good observation.
No, I would like to add to that actually, Monali, because if you look at the popular cinema that actually shapes the way we think about our own culture and about own society is driven by what we have seen through cinema over the years. Even men have been exposed, body has been exposed now so much. They're all have to wax their body as much as women had to do. They all have to have a V-shaped body, so have tight pants, tight clothing, in fact, button open. You can see that. And in fact, I recently attended a wedding in the family, and I saw that even the boys in my family had kurtas without pockets because they had to be fitted to their body. So it's the gender equality is actually coming in a bad way, that both are being a sufferer now, because the good looks have been marketed to the hilt now. Because if you do not have good looks, I mean, people are changing their nose, their eyebrows, even common ordinary people like us, not just film stars, are going to these cosmetic surgeons, and everything is being highlighted as if it is normal, it is fine to change your body and change your looks. And it has to be in a certain way, which was again a colonial impression left on us, this tall, slim, and sharp looking, and features, and cut, very sharp cuts in the face, and of course the fair skin. So you see, even the all the successful actors, including Deepika Padukone, has gone for the body bleachings. They have all gone fairer. Look at Shilpa Shetty when she came, Kajol when she came. So when you're then the what is driving your society, which is popular cinema that everybody looks at and try to copy, is promoting that, then obviously the masses would think that is the right thing to do. When a woman is being shown in an ad of a vegetable oil, frying puris or making healthy atta se rotis, then obviously man will say, yeah, this is your role in the, see, even the ad is showing that that is the role of the woman. So the art is being shown in the popular cinema. That is where art becomes important. When we have certain roles which female leads take, like you have Tapsi Pannu taking such roles, they are not paid very highly, and they're rejected from many films because there are very strong women characters, the role that they are playing. So the entire society is being shaped only by a popular cinema. Then how would you think that there would be any critical thinking involved? Hence, the only way to actually change the society is by changing our own home first. And as I am saying, that this is not limited to anymore only to women. It is now becoming problem of men and women both. You look at all the boys; they have such haircuts, gelled hair. They have to look good when they come out of the house. So it's a pressure on everybody actually, not just women anymore. Balkin, I see now some women are definitely promoting of having pockets in their dresses. There are many brands now they're promoting having pockets in the women's dresses, where the men is like going reverse now.
I concur, ma'am. That's true. Nidhi has prepared a few questions. I think that will help the panel discussion to progress further.
Yes.
Nidhi, you can ask.
Yeah. So, ma'am, actually, what changes do you observe in ancient and modern women, and what similarities you observe? Changes and similarities, both.
In the gender roles of
Yeah,
women.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like from ancient to modern, like.
Okay.
See, a very good example will be if you look at these cave paintings, Bhimbetika, etc. There you have lot of these depiction of women who are, taking equal part in the hunt. They are killing the animal. They are also bringing it home. And also at that time, we really don't see such variation in gender roles. But then, if we go back into that period of history, we really do not have sources, and we have to go back to, we have to assume what would have happened. And Gerda Lerner has, if you read Creation of Patriarchy, she has given a beautiful explanation that when archaic societies came, these were societies in Rome, Mesopotamia, Egypt, all over. They were characterized by two things. One, there was a lot of hierarchy, and people who had land in their control. So people who had land in their control, they became the aristocrats. They were the ones who were ruling, and women were left out. If you read Engels also, he also talks about, the day mothers defeat. That was the greatest day of mothers defeat, because right from beginning, when private property emerges, you want to see that the property goes to your son. And how do paternity is something which is very difficult. How do you prove who's the father of the child? but maternity is something which is visible. I mean, those were days before surrogacy and other things. So how do you prove who's the father of the child? So it led to a lot of control of women, and he links the development of private property to the control of women. And from that time onwards, if you look at history, we've had so many changes. As history student, all of you know, we've had ancient mode of production, primitive mode of production, then you had feudal mode of production, capitalist mode of production, social mode of production. But patriarchy is something which continues from that time. In fact, patriarchy gets more and more reinforced. Women also internalize it. It becomes part of the mainstream. So what happens? I mean, I'm sure all of you are seeing the row over the hijab. What happened when Roop Kaur committed sati in a village in Devrala in 2005? The many women wanted to celebrate Chunari Mahotsav, because we have glorified sati. We said, oh, sati stone, sati temples. And imagine if you put fire to a woman's body, what will be the first reaction? She will run away from there. And imagine a sati mata running. So how did we perform sati? Women were drugged. In Bengal, they were tied to a pole. There was so much of a chanting and beating of drums that the voice of the women was lost. So she was forced through these ways, to commit sati. But it was only the women's groups who said in 2005 that sati is nothing but a murder of a woman. And they did not allow the Chunri Mahotsav to take place. At that time, you had a large number of, women and men also coming, Rajput community, saying, you are attacking our culture. This is our way of doing. When the triple talaq issue comes up, or when we talk of a uniform civil code, when there was maintenance given to women, you have the women who come forward and say, no, no, this is part of our culture. What is very sad today that in our country, if you commit financial embezzlement, there is one law with which you are treated. If you commit a murder, there is one law throughout the country which you are treated. But something which affects women much more, the family, how are we treated? Christian women will be governed by their law, Muslim women will be governed by their law, and Hindu women will be governed by their law. And when we talk of a common civil code, it all gets into politics and women lose out. That's the point which I'm trying to make out. So, right from beginning, patriarchy works in its own way. It incorporates these women, and women also become part of it. And it's not that, having said that, it's not that the world is divided into two and you have all the men on one side who are oppressors and all the women on the other who are oppressed. It depends on how aware you are, how sensitive you are, how you are able to deal with these issues. So throughout history, we've had lots of changes, lots of ups and downs, and in whatever little way women have tried to create a space for themselves. That's what I'm saying.
True, ma'am. In fact, as you were saying about laws and policies, even today, who is the one that decides what policies are applicable? Most majority of the policy makers even today are men. Even though we are 49% of the population, and we are as much capable and literate as the men of the society, we still do not have political representation as much as we need it. So definitely the policies that will be made will have that drawback, because they don't know what we need. They do not know what are our demands, and they are not even in the mood to listen to it. So of course their policies will be biased and partial.
Mhm. Definitely, definitely.
And also, Monali, when there are many women now in the position of power, whether it is politics or arts institutions and institutions that actually are supposed to create policy. So when the women come into power positions, they also do not take those strong steps, because they also says yes with the major chunk, which is of course the men force over there, and do not fight for it. Like, I have seen so many families. You also might have seen that women themselves choose not to take father's property because they think that the relationship with the brothers will spoil. So hence they do not try to take their own right and let it go, for the sake of relationship. So if you are not fighting your own battle when you get the opportunity, then you can't blame only the men. And
Of
when
course.
the woman does that, even the other woman try to show that, oh, she is not a good sister or a daughter because she has asked for her right from the brother. She should have not asked for it because whatever, she's married and all those things. So it's also when the women come into power, they are also not fighting for the rights. They are not making the policies. They are not standing up for the other women and just staying in a positive, good books of the other men folks, ensuring that her position is intact, because there is again a fear that if she'll raise a voice, she might be sidelined and she might have to let go of her position. So a lot of things also need to start from the position of power when women get, like, if I am sitting at as a director of KCC, and I am not doing things for the benefit of the women to include other genders, whether it is women and queers, then of course it is my responsibility that I'm not able to do this. It's like we also need to take strong steps, because when we do take, things do change. Because as the Professor Rekha had been mentioning about, had been telling about the history part, if you see today, a lot has changed in certain way. Because some people stood, like when I was growing up, even wearing a jeans was looked down upon in the city. I was born and brought up in New Delhi, at the capital of India. So now jeans is very normal. Later on, shorts became normal. But there are certain sectors which will still look down upon those. So it's also that we have to keep on changing things ourselves. We have to push things ourselves. So wearing a sari is not wrong as long as it is not imposed on me. If it is my choice and the way I want, if I can wear it, that's fine. So when it comes to imposition of things, that's something that we are against. That it's our life, it is our choice, whether it is sexual, whether it is gender, it should be left to us to choose. And this is a basic human right of everybody to choose to live. What happens in one's bedroom is none of anybody else's business. And now even the discussion has to expand from just women to including other genders as well, which of course identify themselves as transgenders, trans women, other queer elements that more and more that we are talking about.
Reena, I just want to
Yeah.
tell one thing over here. See, while I agree with what you are saying, but if you look back into history, look at all our 5,000 years, our mindset has become such that, we give so much importance
That
to
is
a
so true.
male child. It's a very patriarchal society where son becomes important. In the Hindu Brahminical family, it is the son, the Puth who's very important. The father can pass on his debt. When the husband and when the wife becomes pregnant, in the Yathar Ved, there is a prayer, where both husband and wife go and pray to sun god, and they say, oh God, grant us a daughter, I mean son here and a daughter elsewhere. And then there are so many, if you look at our text, there are so many, that vrat which a woman has to keep, so that the fetus in her womb is that of a male. And she's
Male.
also told that if she doesn't behave herself, the male fetus can be converted into a female fetus. And as part of a project that many proverbs today also, I'm talking about so many years back and today, look at our proverbs. There is a proverb in
Hmm.
Telugu which says, bringing up a daughter is like watering plants in someone else's garden. If you tell lies, you will have a daughter. Getting a daughter married is the Ashwamedh Yag. So, whatever
Hmm.
issues we have, it is very difficult to, change the mindset. That is where we need to attend. And only then we can talk in terms of change, because the mindset has not changed. After so many
Yeah.
years, with so many transitions which we've had, like I said, patriarchy is something which continues. The mindset is something which we have not been able to change. Today, yes,
Hmm.
our students, I look at it, they are very smart, they politically right, they know what to say, they know publicly what to say, but our values and our attitudes inside.
Hmm.
When I have a discussion with many of my students in class, they say, oh ma'am, I don't believe in dowry. But if my parents take, what can I do, as a son? And let the girls bother about it, it's their issue. So I tell them,
Hmm.
fine, today it's the girl's issue, and you think you have
Hmm.
nothing to do with it. But tomorrow, when you are getting your daughter married, don't you think it is your issue? It has nothing to do with women's issue. Women's issues are societal issues. We need to focus on them as societal issues and only then we will come to a certain understanding. And once we have that awareness, only then can we change our society. See, the problem
So
is there is not even an awareness. We take many of these things for granted. So where will the change come?
no, and thankfully,
Yes,
some
Nidhi.
of yeah, some of the young girls that I'm seeing now, they're choosing not to go for things like Kanyadan. They're just going, getting married in the register, signing the register, and are throwing a small party with friends and family. There is no ritual because this Kanyadan. Why Kanyadan? I mean, both are coming together. Two people are coming together to marry.
Yes.
What is the question of Kanyadan? So it's a good thing
See,
that people are taking some good steps now.
Of course, yeah.
no, no, no.
I
You know,
want to add
whatever
something.
steps, yeah, please. See, whatever step, that's fine. One more thing which I say, gender is so complicated. As a historian, when I talk of revolution, when I talk of change, it's so easy. I go and burn someone else's field, I go and burn someone else's factories and all. But when we talk of gender, whom are we questioning? You're questioning your own brothers, your own fathers, your own husbands, and you yourself are interwoven into these relationships. Gender is only one of our identities. We also belong to a particular religion, particular community, particular caste, particular region. So, we have so many multiple identities, which complicates the whole issue. I think we need to really understand that.
Absolutely true, ma'am. We were talking about proverbs and
Yeah.
yes, Nidhi.
Yeah, no, actually, I wanted to add on something. As Rika ma'am was telling about mindsets, if we see the past, ancient, and more medieval mindset of clothing of women, if we see the temple sculptures, Shila Balikas, particularly in Yellora or Belur, Halebeedu, and outside the temple, the women are sculpted in such a way that they are exposing their body, such types of clothes they are wearing. But after colonization, when a girl or a woman, when she wears exposing clothes, she is criticized, whereas in ancient or medieval period it was appreciated by, again, the the other gender people itself, and it was worshipped by them, and again it is being criticized by the other gender itself. So I think that one mindset is changed, I guess, where it was being worshipped, now it is being criticized, I guess. I don't know how much I am correct or wrong, but I just observed this thing, so I thought of expressing.
Now, it's a fact, because the whole way in which Victorian morality came in, our whole attitude towards sexuality and all changed. You're very right in what you're saying. Hmm.
True, ma'am. And since we were talking about proverbs and popular sayings a few minutes ago, even in many films and movies, there are dialogues such as "हमने चूड़ियां नहीं पहन रखी है." So usually weakness and emotions, all this is attributed to women. And चूड़ियां, they are the symbol of women. In earlier times, men and women both used to wear bracelets and bangles and all that. But since now men do not wear those things, they have become symbolic of women, and uh, wearing chudiya or whatever that is, it is again symbolic of weakness. Women are weak. That is the whole point of everything. Women cannot fend for themselves, or they cannot look after themselves, or they are not eligible for freedom. All this is there. It is still there in the mindsets of people. So that has to change. And also it is time that we start talking beyond the binary, because world is not divided it is not divided into men and women. People are not divided into men and women. They have their own gender identities, and I think we should respect all that.
Yeah.
uh, Instead of calling a certain person as a man or a woman, I think it is better to uh, look at that person as a human being first, and then whatever that person asks us to attribute them as, we can call them as, we can put them into that particular compartment before directly judging them by their looks or by their behavior.
Yeah,
Even
definitely.
people,
More
even
inclusive world. Hmm.
Yes, ma'am. Also, I wanted to add here, we were talking about how women do not stand up for women sometimes. or even when they get power, they do not support other women's what needs. Similarly, today there are many men who are trying to break gender stereotypes. They are trying to come out of the traditional role that is given to the uh, male population of the society, and such men are also very much criticized if they are working around the house, or doing household chores, or making food, taking care of their kids. They are treated in a very bad way in the society. Men usually call them names, or even their own mothers or sisters. If a man is taking care of his children, or making contributions to the household work, his own sister or mother will he's Joru ka gulam or something like that. So that also is a very big problem today. When we look at the changing gender stereotypes, now this is another kind of a stereotype that we are facing today.
Definitely. I know these are the stereotypes which we need to question, because it goes with the understanding that this is women's work, this is what women do, this is men's work, that is what men do. And look at our textbook, look at many writings. I still remember my elder son was in class 1 that time. I don't know if today books have changed or not. The first lesson in social science is about the family, and it says girls help in cleaning, cooking, and dusting, and boys help in outdoor work. At the end of the lesson, there was a sentence which said, some mothers are also doctors and engineers. See, to a child of class 1, you have already told that the world is divided into two. This is what mothers do, and this work is inferior to what the work which fathers do. I mean, see, we need to really question these stereotypes. And it cannot just be done. I think everybody has to work unitedly, whether it is our media, whether it is our education system, our text, and only then will we be able to bring about a change in mindset. There has to be a multi-pronged approach, and only then we can, address this issue.
True, ma'am.
Like I said before, that patriarchy is not only targeting women, it targets men as well, because they are also stereotyped in those male kind of role that is shown to them, and which not every man agrees with. They do want to help their in their household chores. They want to take equal responsibility. There are many men like that, but they have been targeted as well. So patriarchy is for both, damaging for both genders. I'm at all genders.
Absolutely true, ma'am. I think we have to start, wrapping up the panel discussion, because we have already we have discussed for an hour, and Reena ma'am has some other commitment too. And of course, this is a discussion that can never end until and unless all these, gender differences and stereotypes come to an end. We cannot stop having this discussion. We have to continue it, and we have to keep coming back at it again and again. Otherwise, such there are some issues that are still considered taboo, and those have to be, brought to the mainstream and discussed about. There has to be a platform for that also. So I think we can have a few more. I mean, a couple more questions, if ma'am is okay with that.
Yeah, Manali, I just want to say one thing, like I keep telling my students time and again, today you may
Yes.
feel you are not empowered, because you're under the control of your parents and all, but tomorrow you are going to be parents. And I think we should start from there. We can really bring about a change where you start teaching your son to respect the girl, and start assisting in housework, etc. And you can teach your daughter to break that silence, and only then the society will slowly start changing. And we have to really start with a change, addressing the mindset. Our both public and private life should be the same.
Definitely, we must be the change that we want to see in the world. It is in
Definitely.
our own hands. But of course, as madam, as you were saying, it needs a united effort also.
Mhm.
Changes at the household level are very welcome, but if that change has to, spread to the grassroots levels, or it should reach the people that are still, those people who still do not have the privilege to teach their sons and daughters as they wish. I think a united effort will be helpful in that particular context. So, Nidhi, do you want to add anything?
Actually, there is a question in the chat box. I think we can take that
Of
one,
course.
and we
Yes,
can conclude the
Nandan Shastri
session.
sir,
Yeah,
he has written a
yeah.
question here. Rekha ji and Reena ma'am. Now women are in Indian Army as well. Even in core committee of Museovision, female admins outnumber male admins, aren't they? This question was directed towards Reena madam.
So what's the question in that? That's a statement that is given.
Yes.
No, that's
Uh,
true. But the thing is that even in Indian army or Indian forces or any forces for that matter, not just it's not a problem of India actually only.
yes.
So women definitely are getting into that. But look at the problems they had to face. There were no toilets when they entered. Everything was aligned with the male strategy, the male mindset, the male needs. So they had to walk that path with great difficulties. They're still walking that path with great difficulty. It is not an easy thing to easy path to take even today. So it's a good thing that some of the women are definitely breaking these stereotype jobs that they were aligned to. I remember there was a time only when people were looking for the bahu, they would think of only school teachers because they would get free by 2 o'clock and return home to take care of the rest of the chores of the house. And so that was considered the best job. So I remember even my mother telling me once upon a time that I should look at the teaching job because that's how you can take care of your family and your profession both. But yeah, thankfully I did not agree with that, and I never repented that. But at the same time, there are some women who are still following that path because again they have it internalized so much, or there is so much of pressure from the family that they are not able to fight unless the parents of a child will support the child in taking what they want to do. And it's the equal responsibility of the parents to fight because they will also have to listen a lot from the society, from the community they live in, if they do support their child in taking the path that they want to take or wear what they want to wear. Because people will say, see, I know, I was interviewed by a principal for my daughter's admission, and she questioned me that since you are a working mother, how will you take care of your child? I wanted to actually ask her that she herself is a working woman and sitting in this office. How is she taking care of her child? So the thing is that these are the kind of questions people are asked, and there the parents also have to be equally supportive to let their children do what they want to achieve and do. So there are some very good supporting parents who have supported their daughters in taking up these challenging roles because they are challenging. I'm saying because there were no space for women in those roles. Even today, they are outnumbered hugely in Indian forces. They are outnumbered hugely by men, and obviously the whole mindset of the males over there, the men over there, is also not that inclusive. So they have to bear a lot of things. So things that yeah, and in Museum Vision group, yes, there are many women who are more than I think men, and thankfully it's a very good space because everybody is given equal right to their opinion and everything is to vote. And that way it's a very, I would say, it's a very inclusive space and a safe space to be in, that Nanji spoke about.
Yes,
Yeah,
and yes, and talking about the Indian Army or many of these institutions, it is not just men and women that we should be thinking about. There are the other genders that are still not inclusive. They are
yeah,
not still having the permission to be included in those institutions. And when will that become normal? When will we start, accepting natural things are natural and not making them as a marginalized group or something that has to be looked down upon. That has to be uh, talked about also.
yeah,
They do not consider fit. They are not considered fit to be able to join the forces.
How
yeah.
does a person's
Exactly.
sexual orientation affect his or her ability to do something?
So
I
That
because
is
want
there
to
is
add
no,
here one thing.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
Nidhi.
Yeah,
so
please.
as it is of course concerned with Nandan Shastri sir's question also, and with the discussion that if we see the entry of women in army earlier, of course there was not a separate wing in Indian army for women. During Indira Gandhi's period, a test case was taken, and uh, a single woman was went through that test. So if we read her about her, there were no separate toilets or bathrooms for women also in training camps, in military camps. So that history of women entering army also is very hard. So I think that time also women were criticized, or they like mindset was there that because of physical strength she should not be added in army or military. So I think that history is also very hard.
No,
That's
Nidhi, I want to tell one thing. See, why only army? By and large, as a social scientist, I like to analyze the gender trends. See, look at
Yes,
it. Yes, most of the school teachers are women, primary school teachers are women. Look at the professors. Most of the professors will be men. Most
yes.
of the
yeah,
CEOs of company will be men. The
yeah,
secretaries will be women. By and large, women are only in gynecology and other areas. Most of the other doctors are men, and the nurses are women. So that is how, we have just carried over women's work at home, her caring, her nurturing nature to these
Yes.
outside work. And Cynthia Anlo tells us that, when women enter these spaces, now IT, we are all talking, women are very few in managerial roles. They are more in, data centers, entry, etc. When women enter these spaces, which are hereby, reserved for men, they enter only as junior level, as cleaners, as sanitors. So, this is the trend overall. Slowly, yes, it is changing, but still it has not changed the way we would like. Yes, military is just the beginning of this. There are so many other areas where you have a domination. The glass ceiling still exists. It's not that easy. In many
Abs-
companies do not like to hire a woman because of these toilets, bathrooms, etc. These are
That is
issues which are real.
Yes, ma'am. And even many times maternity, which is it is considered as a drawback. Women, if we hire women employees, if they get
Hmm.
pregnant, we will have to give them leave. Our work
Hmm.
will suffer. All this kind of mentality is also there. They think that maternity is some kind of a disease or something. So I don't know when that will change. But in conclusion, so far we have had a very meaningful discussion, and in conclusion, if we have to see, uh, gender stereotypes have changed. We cannot say that they have not, like, they have been completely the same, but there is still a long way to go. And some of the ancient problems, some problems such as sati, the big ones, they have been solved. But there are so many more problems, so many more ancient problems which have still remained as challenges in the modern period,
the
and
complex
they have
ones.
still to be addressed. And we have new problems also. Not only the ancient ones, we have new problems which have developed due to the consumerist nature that has become normal in the present day. And all this pop culture, and what we see in the cinemas, that has also added to some of the to the growth of new stereotypes also. And such discussions, they need to be regularly held, because we have to address the issues. Nobody else is going to come and do that for us. We have to do the discussions, we have to bring the change, and it is in our own hands how we shape our futures. So I think that is more important. So I think it is time to conclude. We will continue the discussion again as soon as possible, because there is a lot more to be discussed. However, keeping in mind the time limit that we have, before asking Nidhi to propose a vote of thanks, there are some congratulatory messages in the comment section. There are, Professor Usha Devi has congratulated the organizers as well as the panelists. Also, Chidanand Dhavaleshwar sir has mentioned that it is a meaningful deliberation. we will continue to do this. If any of the viewers have any other suggestions for discussions or webinars, you can drop it in the comment section, and we will definitely, uh, you know, take that inspiration from there. Now, coming to the end of the panel discussion, I request my friend and co-host, Ms. Nidhi Katti, to propose the vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Manali. It was a great panel discussion. Uh, I thank Professor Rekha Pandey ma'am and Reena Diwan ma'am for accepting our invitation in their busy schedule. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and being part of the panel discussion of the history enthusiasts. Thank you so much. And I thank all the audience who continuously support us. Without your support, we cannot do anything in this page. The page is for your betterment, to enlighten you with knowledge. So continue your support, and free feel to share your ideas. Thank you so much. And I also thank co-founder of the history enthusiast page and co-host of this panel discussion, Miss Manali Momaya. Without her, of course, this page is nothing. With her support, of course, we are doing this. So thank you so much for always supporting new ideas of mine. Thank you so much.
Thank
Monali
you.
and Nidhi, I want to really thank you. You know, when I see young people interested in issue, it really moves me. I think you need much more bigger thanks than us.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
ma'am. It is the least we can do, ma'am, since we are, we are the present and the future of this country. We have the responsibility also of trying to make this place better. What we have received, our elders have done a lot for us. They have made the place better and given it to us, and it is our duty, to make it better for the next generation also. So we are trying to do whatever least we can, and the support and guidance of elders like you, it is definitely very much required for us. And we have learnt a lot today from you both. We are extremely grateful for that. Thank you very much. And I also thank Nidhi. It was her idea. The first panel discussion was her idea, and of course, from there on, we have decided to keep having more and more such discussions. So let's go offline then. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye bye. See you
Thank
then.
you.
Reena, I'll be in touch. Bye bye.
Definitely.